he's up.
Hello, and it is time for an engineer guide. The engineer class in Hell Let Loose mainly revolves around providing utility for the squads and the commander. In this guide I will go over some of the basics when it comes to playing engineer, but also go over the details on how I think you could utilize this effectively and play it effectively in the game. For this guide I'll assume you have a basic understanding of the game, and I won't go in depth over the individual loadouts, but focus more on the utility you can provide and how to use it in your own gameplay. There is an exception for this. The US loadout has an extra loadout unlocked at level 6. I personally don't find this loadout all that useful, given the fact that most utility comes from the level 1 and level 3 loadout. As an engineer you can build various things, to either provide your commander with resource nodes, building defensive objects like barbed wire, barricades and whatnot. You can also provide your tankers with a repair station and give them a longer shelf life on the tank, at least that's the idea behind it. Placing blueprints is pretty straightforward, and just like any other object like an outpost or supply box, pull out your wrench and when the blueprint is green you can place it. Before you can actually build the blueprint, you will need a set of supplies. Usually this is 50 supplies that can be provided by a support. And if you want to know more about support, have a look at the support guide I released. For some defensive structures you will need more supplies. For example, if you want to upgrade a barricade to tier 3, a total of 175 supplies is needed if you want to build it up from scratch. You don't have to be next to the supplies. As long as you're within 50 meters of the supplies, you can use them. You can see the distance by either placing a ping on the supplies, or if the supply icon becomes visible, then you are within range. Now we got that covered. At the start of the game, when you pick engineer, you will have to build nodes to provide your commander with resources. This then will be used in return to provide you with airheads, bombing runs and so on. This is also why it is so important to build nodes. I can't emphasize that enough. Without nodes, your team is literally handicapped, since the commander can't add anything to the game or spawn in tanks. Another added benefit to building nodes is that they will give you extra experience for a class in the game. If you build nodes at the start and then swap to assault, the nodes will tick extra experience for your assault class. For building nodes, ask the commander or squad mates to drop supplies in mid HQ. Usually the nodes are built here in mid HQ, and you can place them anywhere. What I prefer to do is being kind to my fellow artillery players and build nodes in front of or to the sides of one artillery gun. It just adds that little bit of extra protection if they come to clear out your artillery. The priority order for nodes is fuel, ammunition and then manpower. Fuel is used by the commander to spawn in tanks, supply trucks, half-tracks and so on. The ammunition node is used for strafing runs and bombing runs. The last node, manpower, is used to spawn airheads and so on. If you can't get your hands on enough supplies in the mid HQ, what you can do is commandeer a supply truck. These supplies cannot be dropped in the first 2 grid rows, but remember we can use supplies within 50 meters. So you can drive up to the top line of the second grid row, drop supplies on the edge and backtrack into the first 2 grid rows. This way you won't lose the nodes until they cap the final point. Also build them off somewhere to the side well away from the fighting area. And last thing about nodes, you cannot place an identical node within 50 meters of another engineer's nodes. On the subject of fortifications, I do think they aren't all that useful in a regular game unless it's offensive game mode or certain situations on specific maps. In competitive Hell Let Loose, fortifications are usually used to cover artillery, prevent recon from pushing in. They are also usually built a tier 3 bunker behind the artillery guns, give a safe haven for incoming rockets. When building fortifications, the bunker and barricade both have 3 tiers. You can upgrade them by hammering them with your hammer, as long as you have enough supplies. Especially the barbed wire in terms of fortification can be a nuisance on some maps. For example, if you have quarantine and the narrow streets, you can completely wall off entrances to a point. When building barbed wire, WTH Jacked once gave me the best tip when it comes to building barbed wire. So barbed wire has a flat end and a pointy end. You can use the pointy end to cover a bit more. Let's say you want to wall off a street, but you can't completely wall it off, you're like a meter short. Try rotating it and wiggle it around with the pointy end, it might give you that extra meter to block it. Almost every engineer loadout, except the US level 6 loadout, comes with anti-personnel mines and anti-tank mines. For the EP mines, the best tip I can give you is place them in areas with heavy foot traffic. For instance, inside the entrance of buildings, on the stairs and so on. Another thing that is happening to me recently is that players are placing AP mines next to their own garrisons. It happened to me more often than not that when I'm pushing an enemy garrison and after a good scrap I manage to make a run for the garrison to dismantle it. There's then an AP mine waiting for me and I have to start all over again. In short, you can also place them near your own garrisons to protect them. For AP mines, I've covered these extensively in my anti-tank guide. You will want to place them on roads or areas where tanks can pass through. When placing them, try to hide them a bit in a dirt mound or rubble or grass. The same goes for satchels, these are also covered in my AT guide, but in short, place them on tanks or within 2 meters of a tank. You can also use them to clear out houses and place them on the wall of a house to blow up everyone inside. This can be particularly useful when clearing out, let's say, the church on St. Mary Glees. There's a reason why I'm mentioning torches in specific. Well, you can repair tanks with that. Given the fact how important tanks are in this game at the moment, it is also vital to repair your tanks and keep them alive. With update 12, you can ride and sit on trucks, tanks, half-tracks, whatever. And you probably have a good idea where I'm going with this. A common trick what you are seeing in competitive Hell Let Loose nowadays, well, in update 12, is having an engineer riding on the back of a tank and wielding the blowtorch. This engineer can fend off players that are trying to satchel the tank, but also repair the tank on the fly and on the move. When it comes to the engineer class, I personally see it more as a flex pick within the squad. At the start of a game you hop onto engineer to get nodes for your team and get that juicy extra experience. Once you are done building nodes, you can jump on another class to join the front lines or defend a point. You can also grab the engineer class if you need a satchel. Let's say you spotted an enemy tank or want to clear out a building, just jump on the engineer class, grab the level 3 loadout to wreak havoc with the satchel. For the rest I tend to play other classes and swap to engineer when needed. As per usual, thank you for watching, and if I forgot to mention anything or you have ideas on how to utilize engineer, let me know in the comments and I will see you in the next one.